guys, this is Miss Warren and I am recording for history this week. Be sure to answer these first three questions. You can pause the recording and read over these questions and send in K-mail your answers before class Tuesday and I will send you a prize. So make sure that you do this. Read these three questions, answer, and I'll send you a prize. Today we're going to talk about how Rome became divided into two sections due to its size and how there became many leaders of Rome as a result. We're also going to use a map to explore cardinal directions as well as map scale to determine the distance between two places. All right, review. Before we get started, as I go through the lesson, I want you to think about these things. The Roman Empire grew too big for one leader to rule and defend. It was just ginormous. The Roman Empire was split into two parts. What were they? East and West. That's pretty easy to remember. Who was Diocletian and why was he important? Who was Constantine? And the key words in the lesson are Diocletian, Constantine, and persecuted. So make sure you keep an eye out for those key words in our lesson today. All right, we're going to look at the Roman Empire. Look how huge it was. It became so big, surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. Remember, that was the Romans' goal, to conquer the entire area surrounding the Roman Sea. Mediterranean Sea, not the Roman Sea. It may as well have been the Roman Sea. But anyway, it grew so large. If you look at all these colored areas, all of this is part of the Roman Empire. So it was ginormous. And we're going to use some mapping skills in class to just kind of locate some things and work with mapping skills. Now, to give you an idea of how big it was 1,000 miles across Gaul. 1,000 miles across Gaul. Now, if you get in your car in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to give you an idea, if you get in your car in Baton Rouge, and you drive along Interstate 10, stop to see Miss Gina right here, and then keep going, you would travel, if you went all the way to Disney World, only about 700 miles. It's a little over 700 miles. It's about a 10-hour drive. But Gaul alone, just Gaul, and look back at that, just Gaul was over 1,000 miles wide. So the Roman Empire was ginormous. Now, at the time, during this time, Diocletian was the ruler of the Roman Empire. He couldn't keep up with a huge area. So he thought, what do I need to do? I need to protect my people. So he divided it into parts and named a co-emperor, kind of like two coaches, or, like on a baseball team, you have your head coach and your assistant coach. He named an additional leader to help him out because he wanted to protect the entire Roman Empire. He didn't want to give up the power, but he did want to help rule the empire. So he was still the main leader, but after he gave up the throne, no one could decide who was in charge. So that's what we're going to talk about today. First, he named one assistant coach and a co-leader, and then he had to continue to add a few more. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we do that, how many gods did the Romans worship? Remember, they worshiped lots of different gods. But there was a group of Jews in Judea, and they worshiped one God. And if you remember, that leads into the next question. Who remembers what we call the people that believed that the Jewish man named Jesus was the promised Savior? That was the Jews in Judea, and we called them Christians. They believed that the Jewish man named Jesus was the promised Savior. They only worshiped God, their God, and Jesus was the son of their God. He was the promised Savior. The Jews were often persecuted, though, because of this, by the Romans. Persecuted means that they were blamed or hurt for what they believed, because the Romans wanted everyone to believe with them. And that made Romans nervous because the Jews had their own ideas and their own gods, and that made them a little bit nervous. Because sometimes in our world, anything different from who we are scares us. And that's kind of what was going on during this time. Rome became so big, though, that they said, there became a saying, all roads lead to Rome. That's because the Roman Empire was so big that they felt like everything was controlled by the Romans. And you know what? If you were anywhere around the Mediterranean Sea, it pretty much was. So what Diocletian did, like we said, he took and he divided his Roman Empire into two sides. And what we talked about in class is just like, take a look at this spider web. It was like that spider web became so big and it was everywhere. The Roman Empire was everywhere. But you know what? See my little friend down here? There was no spider in the web. The army had become so small that there was no big spider. Oop, bring my spider back. He's gone. Anyway, there was no big spider to control that web. There was no big spider in the web. There was a web. It was spread out. The Roman Empire was spread out all over. But that little spider didn't exist because the Roman Empire, the Roman army, actually, it seemed like a little bitty spider. And they needed a big, ginormous army to control all of this space. They did not have it. So that was a problem for Diocletian, and that's why he ended up to protect the Roman Empire. I'm going to take my little spider, put him down here, take my web, move it away. But the Roman Empire, he needed extra help. So that's why he just declared, he made him a partner, and he was a co-leader to control the country. Now what he did is he divided Rome into the east and the west. If you look right here, I drew this line, and if you look, the sort of polka dot area over here was the Western Empire, and this was the Eastern Empire. So Rome was basically divided in half. Let's see if that worked. All right. Rome tried having two emperors, but it wasn't enough, actually. He tried. Diocletian declared another emperor, and he led one part of the country, and the other led the other part of not the country, the empire, and it was just too much. It was still too big. So Diocletian said, okay, I want the best for Rome. I don't want to give up my power, but I want the best for our country. So he added two more junior emperors. So there were 4 rulers now. There were 2 main emperors or rulers, and then there were 2 junior emperors. So there were 4. But you know what? Even that was hard to protect Rome. It was very hard. Diocletian was wise and willing to give up his control, some of his power to help, but he still wanted to be very important, and he wanted to be seen as that first leader. So what he did is he and the first emperor that he named, when he divided the east and west, they turned themselves into God. They declared themselves gods. The people had to bow down and worship him, but the Christians did not believe in him. Remember, they believed in Jesus, so they were persecuted. Remember, Diocletian was a ruler, and he wanted everyone to treat him like a god, but the Christians did not. So in order to punish them and make the rest of the Romans worship them even more, they started doing really terrible things to the Christians. They were thrown out of the army, their churches were destroyed, and their leaders were arrested. I'm sure you've probably heard of some of these stories from your parents. After about 20 years, Diocletian and his partner finally retired. 20 years of persecution of the Christians. But he finally retired. The leaders did stop persecuting the Christians, which was a great thing. They finally left them alone. But they started fighting among themselves. There ended up, even with the emperors and the leaders, there were about 7 men who thought they should lead Rome. Because Diocletian and his partner, they retired. They said, y'all can rule it. So then there was a great battle for who should lead Rome. While they were fighting each other, remember there were about 7 of them, and they were fighting within the Roman Empire for control. While that was going on, their enemies, they called them barbarians, from outside the Roman Empire said, they're busy fighting each other. We're going for it. So they started attacking Rome as well. The Romans realized that they needed help and fast. So along came Constantine. Now, Constantine was one of the 7 men fighting for control of the Roman Empire. He was a son of one of the original Caesars. So remember, there were 4 leaders, and there were 2 junior leaders. He was one of the junior emperors. That's what they called them, was Caesars. And he was very smart. After he defeated or beat many of the other men that wanted control of Rome, wanted control of the Roman Empire, he headed for Rome itself and invaded there. He met with one other army. He had defeated everyone else, and there was one other army, and they met at a bridge over the Tiber River, which is right here, and you guys remember that's right outside of Rome. And there the future of Rome was decided. I bet you can guess who won. Now, when you join me for class on I was about to say on Thursday. On Tuesday, we're going to review these questions. We're going to go over some mapping skills and do some mapping fun together, and we will review this lesson. So be sure to log in, join me, and I can't wait to see you. Don't forget to email those answers to those questions for your prize. See you guys.